It was the kind of cold that doesn't scream, it whispers. A wind that didn't cut through coats, but slipped under them like regret. Washington was hushed that night. The kind of hush cities only carry when everyone is either asleep or pretending to be. The snow had long stopped falling, but it left behind a layer of quiet that felt almost sacred. A presidential motorcade moved through the streets like a slow, gliding serpent of steel and flashing light. Inside the second car, the one no one ever sees clearly, sat a man who had seen too much of everything, and not enough of the small things. Barack Obama, nearing the end of his presidency, stared out the window at a blur of concrete and memory. He wasn't going to a press event. No cameras were waiting. No podium. No handshakes. Just a route. Just a city he claimed as home, but which he still didn't fully belong to. And then he saw him. Huddled against a trash can outside a closed laundromat. Layers of worn fabric stacked on his back like armor that had long stopped working. His body curled inward, not from sleep, but from resignation. One hand clutched a plastic bag, the other was bare, resting on frozen concrete. The man wasn't moving. Not from death, from giving up on being noticed. The Secret Service didn't see it. Not immediately. Their eyes were on alleyways, rooftops, rearview mirrors. But Obama did. And his hand tapped the window, just once. The convoy slowed. He leaned forward. Stopped the car. A murmur of protest. "Mr. President, we're not." Just a second. The tires rolled to a halt. He stepped out without a coat. There's a kind of silence that falls when something sacred is happening. Not divine. Just human. So raw that no one dares interrupt it. He walked 5 steps. No cameras. No reporters. No staff. Just him and the cold. And a man who hadn't looked up in hours. Obama didn't say a word. He didn't kneel. He didn't make a speech or offer statistics about poverty or housing reform. He simply took off his coat, the one tailored to fit a president, and gently laid it over the man's back. It was too large. It slid down awkwardly. But it was warm. And human. And then he walked back to the car. No one asked where his jacket went. No one dared. Later, someone would find the footage. Not from a government camera. A security system above a pawn shop across the street, grainy and tilted, but clear enough to see, the outline of a man, bending down, giving something away without needing to be seen. It wouldn't make the front page. He wouldn't mention it. But in a city of gestures, in a world of performance, it was real. Because leadership isn't always in the laws you sign, the wars you end, or the speeches you give. Sometimes, it's in the warmth you leave behind, when no one's watching. The motorcade was moving on schedule. Down the dark veins of Washington, past government buildings sleeping under floodlights, through neighborhoods wrapped in coats of silence. Inside the presidential limousine, the air was dim, climate-controlled, and padded in layers of protocol. But even in that carefully calibrated silence, Barack Obama was somewhere else. He was watching. Not the men in suits across from him. Not the folders they sometimes passed. But the world beyond the glass. A blur of lives untouched by headlines. Most nights, these drives were invisible. Routes built on routine. Places mapped by security, not emotion. But tonight, something caught. Like a thread on a nail. A figure. A stillness so sharp, it screamed. He turned his head slightly. The man was half hidden in the crook of a shuttered laundromat and a mailbox, curled beneath a thin sleeping bag that didn't seem to belong to him. Layers of fabric and plastic covered his legs, but not his hands. One of them was outstretched, open. Not asking. Not begging. Just there. As if waiting to feel something different than cold. Obama felt his chest tighten. He had passed thousands like him. Every president had. But there was something about this one. Maybe it was the way his face was turned toward the wall, as if the world outside had betrayed him long ago. Maybe it was because the snow hadn't melted around him. Maybe it was because Obama couldn't tell if he was asleep, or trying to forget being alive. He tapped the window. "Sir," the agent asked. "Stop the car." "Mr. President, that's not advised." "I didn't ask if it was." The convoy slowed. In the silence, radios crackled. Tactical words floated between vehicles. Deviation, confirming stop. Southbound paused. Eyes up. POTUS exiting. All code. All fear. That's what happened when the most powerful man in the world stepped outside the plan. He didn't wait for approval. The door opened with its familiar hiss, and suddenly the wind took over. Sharp, honest, undeniable. He stepped out. In shirt sleeves. No coat. No gloves. 3 black SUVs idled behind him. Secret Service agents stepped out cautiously, eyes scanning rooftops, alleyways, reflections. One of them spoke into his wrist mic, eyes on. POTUS moving. Solo. Obama didn't say a word. He walked. 5 steps. 7 maybe. The city didn't notice. No cameras, no citizens leaning out of windows. Just a flickering street lamp and the sound of his leather soles on salt-dusted concrete. He approached the man slowly, as if disturbing him might rupture the moment. The man didn't look up. His breathing was shallow, but present. His fingers purpled from exposure. His coat was too small. A woman's coat maybe. Or a child's. Threadbare. Wet. Obama hesitated. Not because he doubted what to do. But because he wanted the moment to be whole. He didn't want it rushed. He didn't want it to become theater. He pulled his own jacket off, navy wool, tailored, lined in silk. A gift from Michelle years ago. He had worn it during state visits. Meetings with monarchs. Summits with world leaders. And now, he draped it carefully across a man who didn't know who he was. Not roughly. Not ceremonially. Just, gently. Like someone tucking in a child. The man stirred, briefly. But didn't wake. And Obama stepped back. He didn't say anything. Didn't leave a note. Didn't motion for a photo. He just looked once more, at the figure beneath the coat, at the life beneath the frost, and then turned. Back in the car, the warmth hit him like shame. His aides didn't speak. The convoy began to move again. Only one of the agents broke the silence. "Sir, with respect, what if someone had seen you?" Obama looked out the window. "I hope they didn't." The footage surfaced a week later. Not from the White House. From a pawn shop security camera across the street. The angle was off-center. The timestamp flickered. But the shape was unmistakable. A man in shirt sleeves stepping from a black car. A gesture. A coat. A moment. It went viral within hours. Some refused to believe it. Staged, they said. Symbolic politics. Optics. But those who had worked with him, they knew. He had done it before. Quietly. Repeatedly. Not just coats. But hands. Time. Attention. He had once said in private, the measure of a leader is how they treat those with nothing to offer in return. No one expected that night to mean anything. Not in policy. Not in polls. But it did something deeper. It reminded people that behind the title, there was still a man. A man who still looked. Who still noticed. Who still felt. And who believed that sometimes, what you give when no one's watching, Defines everything you've built while they were. The video uploaded quietly. No headline. No press release. Just a silent, shaky clip posted by a night shift clerk named Raymond on a forgotten YouTube channel called DC Unseen. The caption read, "Did I just see the president give his coat to a homeless guy?" No tags. No thumbnail. Just pixels and instinct. At first, nothing happened. 23 views. Then 40. Then a retweet from a local journalist. Then 200 shares. Then thousands. It was the shape of the man, the shape of the moment. The way he moved, calm, deliberate, unscripted. A nation trained to spot insincerity in every flicker of light, saw something they didn't know they'd missed: authenticity. That night, the video traveled faster than any policy had. It wasn't just trending, it was piercing. Cutting through cynicism like a flame through fabric. In an age where every act was curated, filtered, monetized, here was a moment so quiet, so unsellable, that it became priceless. People didn't just watch it. They paused. Rewound. Rewatched. They wrote comments like, "I cried. And I don't even like politics. This feels like a memory I didn't know I had. He didn't do it for us. That's why it mattered." Meanwhile, in the White House, silence. No confirmation. No denial. No comment. Obama was in his office the next morning. No TV. No social media. Just a report folder open and unread. One of his aides cleared their throat gently. "Sir, it's circulating." He looked up. "The video?" A nod. He smiled faintly. "Let it." Cable news picked it up by midday. Split-screen segments. Analysts parsing frame by frame. Is this real? Is it responsible? What message is he sending? One panelist sneered, "The president shouldn't be making gestures in the dark. That's not how government works." Another replied, "Maybe that's exactly how it should work." Some called it radical empathy. Others said it was reckless. A few asked where the coat came from. One conspiracy blog claimed it was a body double. But the people, the ordinary ones, didn't care. To them, it was simple. He saw a man in the cold, and he did something. No speech. No press badge. No agenda. Just warmth. That night, thousands of coats were left on benches across the country. Park swings. Subway platforms. Bus stops. People left notes. Because someone saw me. Because this country should feel like that moment. Because kindness doesn't need a signature. In Minneapolis, a teenager organized a jacket drop protest, silent, peaceful, effective. In San Antonio, a retired teacher left her late husband's trench coat outside a shelter with a photo of Obama taped to the tag. No campaign could have orchestrated it. No advisor could have predicted it. And Obama? He still said nothing. He didn't reference the moment in any speech. Didn't respond to the noise. When asked by a reporter days later about the coat incident, he raised an eyebrow and said, "I lose things all the time." In private, he spoke once. To a small group of staffers after a quiet policy session, he lingered in the room and said, "Do you know why I didn't wait for anyone that night?" They shook their heads. He paused. "Because I knew if I hesitated, I'd talk myself out of it." And that was it. No lesson. No follow-up. Just truth. The man who received the coat was eventually found. His name was Leon. Vietnam veteran. 68 years old. Diagnosed with schizophrenia. Missing from the system for over 2 decades. When asked if he remembered the moment, he said, "I remember it was warm. That's all." And maybe that was enough. Maybe that's all it was ever meant to be. Years later, the coat would resurface. Not in a museum. Not in an auction. In a shelter, worn by someone else, fraying at the edges, still carrying the weight of the gesture. Someone noticed the tag, a tailor's mark unique to the president's preferred cut. Quiet proof. But by then, the story had moved on. Not away, forward. Into hearts. Into habits. Because that's how some echoes work. They don't fade. They find new voices. Years passed. Administrations changed. The headlines that once held Obama's name gave way to louder, sharper storms. His voice, once daily, weighty, dissected, faded into the background hum of retrospectives and foundations. New leaders filled the stage. New crises consumed attention. And yet, that one moment, that single gesture on a winter night, refused to vanish. Not because it was documented. But because it was remembered. And memory, unlike data, has a heartbeat. In a classroom in Chicago, a teacher projected the grainy security footage onto a whiteboard. Not as civics lesson. But as humanity. This, she said, is leadership without a microphone. The room was silent. A boy in the back raised his hand. Why didn't he tell anyone he did it? The teacher smiled. Because some things get louder when whispered. In a textile museum in Maryland, an exhibit was quietly curated, not sanctioned, not advertised. A replica of the coat. A plaque that simply read. Wool. Lined. Worn by those who notice. Visitors stood longer in front of it than they did at war uniforms or royal fabrics. Not because of its grandeur, but because of its humility. A grandmother was heard whispering to her grandson. He didn't need a crowd. Just a reason. Obama never referenced it. Even in memoirs, in speeches, in conversations with confidants. The coat was a ghost he refused to name. But occasionally, when someone else mentioned it in passing, he would look away slightly, not in shame or pride, but in reverence. As if protecting a sacred moment from being cheapened. Michelle once said to a friend. He believes that some things aren't his to explain. They just are. And yet, the thread held. It wove itself into lives without permission. Into a high schooler who started a winter clothing drive, just in case someone cold walks by. Into a city councilwoman who refused a press conference after passing a bill, saying, some things don't need to be announced. Just done. Into a pastor who opened his church vestibule at night for sleeping bags, citing the gospel of warmth. No campaign. No strategy. Just resonance. One night, years later, in a quiet room with no reporters, Barack sat alone watching a documentary someone had made, not about him, but about street kindness. The footage from that night appeared midway. The same grain. The same slow, silent walk. He didn't flinch. He didn't smile. He whispered, I remember the weight of it. And perhaps he wasn't talking about the coat. Leadership often gets defined by the grand. The wars. The bills. The moments in marble halls. But the thread that holds it all together, the quiet gestures, the unseen mercies, those are what last when applause fades. Because there is power in policy. But there is legacy in compassion. And sometimes, a presidency is stitched not from flags or ceremonies, but from the warmth left behind. On the back of a man. Who never knew who gave it.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that move the world. Thanks for watching.